Hello, my name is Edith McLeod Armstrong, but most people simply call me Mama Edie. You know, when you are identified as someone other than from a European heritage, sometimes the way your people can be presented in history can make you feel categorically small, or flawed, or ugly, or useless, and even invisible. And when you're a child, your childhood perceptions, when blended with images from your history as that has unfolded, can actually haunt you and can leave you feeling mentally in bondage forever if you allow that to happen. And what becomes important is for us to then realize that there is some healing that needs to be done. I have had my healing to be done, and I continue to do so. I remember, though, one of my first recognitions of how people can perceive things differently. I mean, the same event. They can see the same event, they can all be there, but they see it differently, was with my grandmother. My paternal grandmother, her name was Estella Hunt McLeod, and she was born around 1890. And her people were from the Seminole, Cherokee, and Blackfoot tribes. And so she is actually our most familiar branch to those lineages. And she taught us many things. Now, her people were from Florida, and she married my grandfather, Quilla McLeod, from Georgia, somewhere between those borders. Now, although she did die when I was young, I do remember her, and I cherish the relationship that we had. I can remember her firmly set square jaw. I remember her thin lips as she talked. I remember her eyes, her large, warm eyes. And it was almost as though she could look straight through you with those eyes. And you know how oftentimes people talk about how mothers and grandmas have eyes in the backs of their heads? Well, my grandmother also had eyes in the back of her head. She saw everything. We loved her very much. We called her Nani Dear. Now, Nani Dear was kind of quiet, even though she was firm. But when she spoke, she ended up saying something that most people were going to long remember. And she also did some things that were pretty memorable as well. I can remember a particular time when I had gone over, I must have been about 5 years old or so this must have been, say, about 1956. And I had gone over to spend the night. I used to enjoy spending the night with my grandmother. And we would watch television together for a while, but there's one particular day, this was the first time I had ever had this experience with her. We're watching an old Western on TV. Now, keep in mind that these were the programs that depicted the U.S. cavalry and also the invading frontiersmen as the good guys, and the Indians or the Native Americans who were fighting to keep their homes and their lives were depicted as the bad guys. Well, now, needless to say, Nani Dear didn't care for that particular perception or portrayal that she offered, that she saw there. And so what she would do sometimes, once the soldiers and the frontiersmen came charging in and they were shooting up everybody and they were setting fires to the village, and you saw young children scattering, looking and calling for their parents, my grandmother, Nani Dear, would get so upset, she would take off her house slipper and she'd throw it at the television set, and she'd say, "Leave him alone! Leave him alone, you dirty rascals! Leave him alone!" Well, I wasn't quite sure what was going on, and I thought it was a little strange. It was kind of funny, and I wondered if maybe Nani Dear had been out in the sun a little bit too long. But as time passed, I came to understand what made her so angry. And those things started to make me angry too. And in fact, I can even remember when I was younger and I had gone to St. Elizabeth Catholic Elementary School in Chicago, where I grew up, and also later at St. Carthage. And while there, the nuns always seemed to have a ready arsenal of patriotic music to arm us with and to teach us. Well, one of the songs that they taught us was the one that repeatedly states, "This land is your land, this land is my land, from California to the New York Island. This land was made for you and me." But as I got older, and as I started to experience the responses from different people simply to my presence, and as I began to see how the country really functioned and what was important and who was not, I wasn't really so inspired to sing that song because I didn't feel like this land was made for me. But actually, the whole world is made for you and me, isn't it? I mean, it is intended for us to share it and to honor the humanity in all of us, but that's not the way it happened here. That wasn't the way it happened. So I came to understand my grandmother's anger. And sometimes, as I'm driving across beautiful rolling meadows in my car, when I look out in the distance across those hills, it's as though I can almost see horses running free across land that at one point had no gates, no fences. People understood how to honor each other's boundaries. And I can almost see the shadows of young children at play, running to and fro. I can see fathers talking with their sons and explaining to them what it means to be a man. I can see mothers talking with their daughters, teaching them how to weave blankets and how to braid hair and how to cook, and just laughing and giggling and having a good time being girls. But I'm also haunted by the image of my ancestors who crossed too many trails of tears. I understand that even though I still feel the pain, I still feel the wounds of my African ancestors, of my Native American ancestors, somehow through it all, I've come to appreciate and to embrace the totality, or as much of it that I know, that I happen to be. Don't know too much about our rather obscure relative, Bajati, who was from Italy, but who apparently really, really loved my great-great-grandmother and bore many children. But I think that the important thing is to continue this story on because I'm a part of this continuum. And as such, I will continue to tell this story. And I will continue to try to heal my wounds. And I will continue to try to encourage my daughter, Ayana, and anybody else's children, even grown folks, to try to heal those wounds that we hold inside and to try to see a little bit of God in each and every one, in all of God's creation. And I think that this would be our greatest achievement. This would be our greatest gift that we can give back to those ancestors who loved us. We need to remember that we've got the strength to do it because we are the children of those who survived.